Welcome back, Awkward Insurance listeners. Thanks for joining us again. I am once again super excited to have a guest on with me today. We have talked to her before, and I think more than once. This is your third episode, right, Ash?
I think so.
Yeah, so we have Ashley Fitzsimmons with us today. Of course, most of you know her or may not know her as the Beyonce of insurance. So welcome back, Beyonce.
Thanks for having me back. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you. It's been almost a year since our last episode together. That's crazy for me. Like, I've been doing this podcasting thing for almost a year. That's nuts.
I know. I feel like, was I like I wasn't the first podcast that was put out there, but I think like I was the first recording you did.
Yes, you were the first recording, but not the first one. You were supposed to be the first one. I wanted you to be the first one, but we had a couple of issues in between, and then one of them was about it was what was it? Oh, it was fires and babies, and
Yes.
that was super hot, no pun intended. So we put that one out first. But yes, you were the first to record. The most awkward, in my opinion, because we said a 3-letter word several times that I had rarely said in my history before. It starts with an S and ends with an X, and you guys can fill in the third letter in the middle. But, so it was really awkward for me, and I was still growing into it, and I was speaking to Beyonce, so I was really nervous.
Well, then that was like a good one to start with, to just really get everything out there on the table. I made you feel uncomfortable, and you got over that, and now you're not uncomfortable anymore. So it's perfect.
Know. Oh, gosh. So, it's so like a year. And I think, our topic when we talked a year ago was about having awkward conversations with our clients. And I really feel like our conversation today just kind of picks up where we left off. So what's going on with the Ohio Insurance Agents Association right now? What's up?
Yeah, we have a lot of awesome things going on here. I mean, if we talked a year ago, then at that point, I was kind of helping out in the education department. But I have a new title, and I'm now the Director of Professional Development here at OIA, which is really exciting. I basically have free creative reign to, really build up this department and, make education fun again.
Yes.
Essentially. So, planning some classes. We've created some of our own classes in-house here that I teach and that other members teach. We're finally getting back into our in-person schedule, which is awesome. I'm so excited to be around people again. Planning for IACon. It's our big annual conference. It got canceled last year, of course, with COVID. So I'm just so excited to have that in downtown Columbus at COSI. It's going to be a really great time. And traveling is back. So I'm so excited to be traveling to Tennessee and to Kansas City, I think I'm going to at one point. So I'm just ready to get doing things again.
You're going to Tennessee. I'm going to Tennessee too. Now I'm driving in because flying right now is making me nervous.
Yeah, I'm driving too. I just don't like flying, period. I won't let it stop me from going somewhere, but if I have the option to drive, I will definitely drive.
How long is the drive for you?
It's like 5 hours or something.
Oh.
It's not horrible. It's closer to drive to Tennessee than it is to drive home to Pennsylvania.
I'm jealous. I have a 9-hour drive ahead of me.
Oh, that one's rough.
So I'm leaving super early in the morning, hoping to be able to stop somewhere and take a little bit of a breather, but tons of podcasts on my lineup to be able to listen to. And I'm super excited about your new role. You said you're teaching. What classes are you teaching? Because I might have to make a trip to Ohio for that.
Well, right now they're virtual, but I taught a course. Ohio had a new annuity update that we had to do, so I taught a 1-hour annuity update course to get everybody back on track and where they're supposed to be. And I've created a cannabis course. It's called the Blunt Truth About Cannabis Insurance. There's E&O, things you can learn from 2020, which is more of just like a general E&O course overview, but it also takes into consideration things that were brought up during the pandemic that really made people start questioning, do we have things in order to move forward?
Yeah.
And I forget I'm still working. I have it all ready, but I'm just not ready to present it yet. It's TikTok trends gone wrong, and how there's certain TikTok trends out there that can affect home and auto policies.
Oh my gosh. You are making education fun again. Those are a bunch of fun topics. Okay, so in the last year, you've also had another big change.
Yeah, I went from Beyonce to fiance.
He put a ring on it.
He definitely put a ring on it. A very nice ring. He did great.
Okay, so I haven't seen it and you guys can't see because we have cameras, but I can see it. So hold the finger up, please. Oh, it's gorgeous, you guys.
He did good.
He did do good. Oh my gosh. What's his name?
Steve.
Steve did good. Good job, Steve. Congratulations. I am so excited for you, but I'm also super nervous for you. I didn't plan a wedding when I got married. We did something really small, family oriented, went up to the Ozark National Forest here in Arkansas at a little campground that had a lovely little pool running through it, a waterfall kind of thing, and the mountains coming down and this little camp place. And we got married that way. And our outfits were from Banana Republic, and that was it. There was no risk management in it because there weren't, other than food poisoning. That was the only risk that we really had. So I'm really curious, as you're going around doing your wedding planning, what's going on in your head? Because it just never turns off with us.
No, it definitely doesn't turn off. And my family is like notorious for having really large weddings, and I didn't want a really large wedding, but it's starting to, like, we would have like 350 people weddings. My venue only holds 190. So we have to limit it a little bit. So some family is, we're not going as extended as we typically do. But yeah, I mean, the first thing I did as soon as we booked the venue, like the venue didn't even have to ask me. I already got 2 policies in place. I got one that was just liability because I'm like, you know what like, I was always the person in the agency that people just were focused on liability, and you really couldn't talk them into getting, like the traveler's insurance policy that also covers the photos if something happens to them, or the dress if something happens, or cancellation. They just want the liability, what they need. So I would always go with WedSafe and just get them that policy, and the liquor liability, we're good to go. So I got that, and I'm like, I don't need this other stuff. And then I'm like, no, I need it. So now I have 2 policies, one through Travelers and one through WedSafe for both liability and then also cancellation stuff. And God forbid my dress goes up in flames, which I've seen claims happen. Like that's a thing. Like people's dresses have caught on fire. So, but yeah, it doesn't shut off. I was in the venue and I was already saying to Steve, there's it's a really beautiful place. It's an atrium. It's called the Franklin Park Conservatory, and we're in what's called the Palm House. So it's absolutely beautiful inside. And there's a water fountain in there, a small one. So, of course, my mind goes to, all right, here's the list of people that I think will end up in the water fountain by the end of the night. How much damage can they do? They definitely can't drown. It's not deep enough, so we're okay there. But I'm just like, Steve is there trying to just enjoy the scenery and say, wow, we're getting married here. This is beautiful. And I'm like, all right, he's going to be in the water fountain. I hope nobody lets any butterflies out of the butterfly museum or whatever they have going on there. So,
oh, no.
Yeah, lots to think about.
So open bar or pay as you go?
It'll be an open bar.
Oh, wow.
Definitely need that liquor liability.
Yes.
But we have transportation, so we're okay.
Oh, that's good. Transportation, like to get your guests to and from back home, or?
Well, not back home. I'm not driving people back to Pennsylvania, but back to the hotel. Yeah, so it's only about like 1.5 miles away from the venue, so we'll have a trolley pick them up, take them down, and bring them back.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That brings up a great idea in my head. We recently, okay, you guys, I'm super excited because we're getting some more comments in on our podcast line, which is exciting for me as a newer podcaster because that lets me know if our content is connecting with our listeners. So we recently got a comment in on an episode talking about risk management, which when we were deciding to have this conversation about him putting a ring on it, and all the things that go through our heads. And then I connected it back to our first episode about having those conversations with our clients, the awkward conversations. This particular listener was like, you know what? I was listening. I think she said episode 4. I'll have to go back in the files and see if that's the actual one. But she was super interested in renewal questionnaires or risk questionnaires or just something that connects her to her clients in order to understand the changes that have occurred over the last year because our clients don't always tell us. So that ring on your finger, is it insured?
Of course it's insured. As soon as it happened, I'm pretty sure he stood up after I said yes. And I'm like, please tell me you have an insurance policy on this. We'll get it transferred into my name. Well, like that was like the first thing I thought. I was terrified to wear it.
No, your family has an insurance agency, right? Did I remember that correctly? So is dad your insurance agent?
He's not. They're only licensed in Pennsylvania. So
okay.
I'm through an agent here in Ohio, and he's awesome. Shout out to Tony Mariani.
So that's amazing. So, okay. So our listener is interested in renewal questionnaires or something that can help her discover the risks that her clients are going through or the changes that her clients have had over the last year. Do you have any any tips or anything? I think this would be a great time to kind of explore that as a way if you are starting from scratch and you've never heard of a renewal questionnaire or risk questionnaire, how do you build one of those?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think this is something that's super important. And it amazes me sometimes. Like, I know that our agency was a little bit old school and that we still use a lot of paper, when I was there. And we're in a smaller town with a lot of older clientele. So we were a couple steps behind. But when it came to documentation, like we were on it. So I'd rather have paper, but know that I am covered when it comes to an E&O exposure. And maybe we go a little bit over the top, but we always had what we needed when there was something in question. So I think the first place for her to start would even just be for like a new business fact finder. So I refer to it as a fact finder. I feel like a nerd when I say that, but
fact finder.
So I would start there because I think a lot of times people call in and they get flustered and they just start, going with the questions off the top of their head. But if you have a fact finder in front of you that you can go off of, it's really going to help you get all of that initial information that you need from that client when you're quoting them. And not only that, but it helps keep you on track and gather information that they might have not brought up otherwise. Because you're going to kind of go through the fact finder in a way that makes the client tell a story. Because you don't want to just like, okay, name, birthday, blah, blah, blah. Like, you don't want to just go down the list. You want to get them.
Wait, you don't?
I hope
Isn't
not.
That what you do?
You want to get them talking. Insurance is painful enough. You want to have a conversation with them. And, when you see things that are relatable.
You start building the relationship right from the beginning, right?
You see things that are relatable and you bring it up like, oh, I have a neighbor that lives by you or something along those lines. And you build that fact finder with, the obvious basic questions that you need for a quote, but then you add in whatever company weird questions they have. So you're getting all of that done at one time and you don't have to call them back and say, oh, to get you a quote with this company, I need to know this. There's still companies out there that ask and surcharge if there's smokers in the household. Like, I wouldn't think of that off the top of my head to be like, oh, are there any smokers in the household? So it's good to have all of those things on the paperwork. Do you have a pool? Is it fenced? Is there a diving board? Is there a slide? Companies have so many different criteria on that you just want to have everything checked before you even bother going into the quote. And it's going to really make that client, if it's the right type of client, stop and think and be like, man, that's pretty good. They're asking me all these questions. They're really getting into detail.
Right. Absolutely. Great points, all for new business. So you're saying to start with, if you're building a renewal questionnaire or something to discover that awkward conversation over the last year, start with what you would normally ask at the beginning of the relationship, the new business stuff, which typically is going to be stuff that's going to be on your apps. And if you represent multiple carriers, then you're going to need to keep all the different types of information that they have on their apps in mind when you're building this renewal questionnaire. So renewal questionnaires are a great touch point for your clients because as your book starts to grow, a lot of times, especially with newer independent agents, or if you're just starting your agency, you're going to be in the mindset that you want to call your client every single year. You want to have that personal touch to be able to speak with them. But as you start to grow, that's going to get impossible. And as you start to build your staff, that's going to be even harder when you need them to focus on different aspects, whether it's, remarketing that stuff or cross-selling or whatever it is. You're going to need them to focus on something more than just reaching out to every single client, every single renewal. So these are a great way to get in front of your client without having to contact them. Now you can deliver them however you want, whether it's, there's so much insurtech out there right now. You just find the right platform. You don't have to mail them. You don't have to email them if that's feeling old school. It can be like a link to an e-survey even. But the greatest pain point for me in having done these for 15 years across a couple of different agencies is that it needs to be, and now that I'm technically a consumer of insurance since I'm not in an agency anymore and breaks my heart every day. But I just received my first renewal questionnaire from my agency, which is where I used to work. And it was a little bittersweet because I'm like, oh, I'm not the one sending these out anymore. And now I have to answer this thing and I can't just go and change my insurance whenever I want anymore. And it's a little sad. Lost a little bit of control there. But I got it and I answered every single one like a true nerd that I am and assessed every single risk that I had as if, it was weird. Anyways, so so the biggest pain point for me is to make it as easy as possible for the consumer, because if they look at it, especially if it's a couple pages long, it's probably going to need to be a couple pages long if it's in a PDF format. It needs to be easy. They don't need to explain a lot. That needs to be on the agency or the agent to the customer checks a yes or a no. This has changed. Do you have any vehicles in your driveway that are not on your policy? Yes or no. Don't write down which vehicles they are, because then they're going to have to go out there and look at a VIN number and it's going to become difficult and they may not even complete the rest of the questionnaire. So it's a yes or no thing. The agent gets it back. They take a look over it. They see what the changes are, and then they can reach out to the client. If everything is a no, then great. You just had a touch point with your client without actually having to call them, and you can focus on the client that needs your attention, the one that started checking the yeses. So that's my very first tip for building one of these things, is to keep the customer in mind first before you start making your questions, so that it's as easy as possible for them, because you want to get as many as possible back, especially if you're looking at it from an E&O standpoint and you want to make sure that you're covering all your bases. I'm more personal focused, and I forget what your focus was. Was it personal, commercial? It sounds like you've got some life and health in there with some annuity stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, we were a heavily personal lines agency. We were growing commercially while I was there for the 10 years. But I was going to say, when you said keep it easy, sometimes for maybe a smaller agency that doesn't have the capacity, like if you say you should be sending out renewal questionnaires to every renewal, it could get like a little bit overwhelming and people could be like, oh my God, this is going to take up so much time and we don't know if we have the staff to handle this. If you want to even go one step easier, what I had created for some members here even was just a small postcard that I told them to send it out about 90 days in advance, send it out before they're even getting their personal lines renewals in the mail. So it looks like it's just a general touch base, and it's a postcard that says like, hey, we're just letting you know, we appreciate you, or you're awesome. And on the back, it's simply saying, listen, we get it. Life changes. And the first thing on top of mind is not to call your insurance agent. Like, oh, I got engaged, I better call my insurance agent. People don't think that way.
Right.
So it says, we're here for you. We want to make sure that you're covered properly. Please call us with any updates. Here are some common updates that people forget to let us know about. Like, you got married, you got a new car, you have a 16-year-old driver, and you just put like 5 or 6 main points. And even if one of their changes doesn't fall in those main points, it's still going to be a flag in their mind to call and reach out. So you're covering yourself because you sent that out to them. And if they don't call and tell you and there is a claim, you can say, well, I mailed this to them. They should have thought of that. So, I mean, I'm not going to say that's going to stand up in court 100%, but you are giving that extra layer of protection and also that extra outlet and opening for communication with your clients. But it's not as intensive as implementing a completely new, renewal questionnaire step.
No, that's a great first step, if you will, especially if you feel like it's going to be overwhelming as an account manager, because that's the person that commented in. She was, I believe, an account manager, and she's bringing it up to her office. Sounds like a smaller office, and they think it's a wonderful idea. So it's something that they hadn't implemented before. So even account managers can bring these ideas to their principals or their agency leaders and say, listen, this sounds like something that can really get us more information. Yeah, it's a great cross-selling, tool. Even if you don't just look at it from an E&O standpoint and that you're trying to cover all your bases, it's a great cross-selling tool. That's all I'm saying. Because at the time that you wrote that home and auto, somebody might have been kind of tight on a budget and now they're kind of in a better situation and they're ready for that umbrella, or they've bought that boat, or they're about to buy the boat, or what. It's a great cross-selling tool is all I'm saying. But that's a great idea. The biggest trigger that you want to make sure that you do is make sure that the question, like you said, these are normal life changes that come up. Are any one of these affecting you? gets their wheels turning so that they think, oh, there might be something. Because that's what I worry about the most with questionnaires is that, it goes back to you don't know what questions to ask. When you
Right.
don't know what questions to ask, your insureds are not going to know to contact you with a change when they don't know that they should contact you with that particular change.
Yes.
So just sending out a postcard, I'm glad you said that you put on there a couple of questions about like different life changes because I was getting a little nervous just sending out a postcard that's like, have you had any changes? They're going to be like, no, I don't think so.
Exactly.
Because they don't know what questions to ask. So don't stop there. Make sure you've got some examples of what types of changes come up. So start with your new business apps or your new business questionnaires. The other idea is every region is different. What is happening in Florida is not the same as what's happening in Arkansas. We've got some like short-term rental risk here. But even in Texas, to bigger states where there's more tourism or something, there's apps now where you can rent out your pool. Did you know that?
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
There are apps that you can rent out your pool. Like you're still in your home. Maybe you just go, around town for a little bit while somebody is in your backyard with their kids having their birthday party because you just rented out your backyard pool.
Yeah, I'm getting anxiety right now. Thank you. I'm like picking at my nails right now because I'm anxious.
Oh no. So yes, I mean, there's weird little things like that. It definitely has not happened in I say definitely not happened in my neighborhood. It could be happening in my neighborhood and I don't know about it. But that's the type of stuff that your insureds may not think to say, yeah, I've started renting out my backyard pool. But if you're hearing about those types of risks popping up in your area, then it may be something that you need to add to your risk questionnaire. Or how about coastal states? Coastal states don't include wind on their homeowner policies. You have to buy a separate wind policy for that, right? So here in Arkansas, not a coastal state, wind is included. We're not going to need to put on our questionnaire, do you need a wind policy? But a coastal state is going to need to do that.
Well, and now that you're saying that, I think like another really big one because of COVID is going to be, business exposures in the home or business personal property in the home, because there's so many people that obviously had to go and work from their house and they had to take, I'm sure, some of their computers and laptops and paperwork and that kind of stuff home. And, there's limitations obviously on that in a homeowner's policy. But the biggest thing that I'm also thinking about is, okay, let's say you have somebody that has clients that they deal with often, and now they have the clients coming to their house. Great, COVID's over, but they're not going back to the office. So, hey, just stop at my house and pick this up.
Right.
And now the client slips and falls. So, it's stuff they would never think anything of that, which I don't blame them. As a normal person who doesn't understand insurance, why would you think anything's wrong with that? I've got homeowners insurance. It's fine. But you really have to. That's why when you're going over these fact finders, I especially think at the first step with the new business ones, when you're having these conversations with people, you need to be jotting notes down on the side when you hear them say random things like, oh, I have 2 kids in the house or something. Like, you need to be jotting those kids' ages down, even if they're not 16. So you can put a note in your system. Hey, 4 years, they're going to get their license. Like,
no, how about wait on the auto? I don't know if you've seen this lately. I get on social media quite a bit when I'm trying to fall asleep. But there's this video that I've seen lately, speaking of kids, and I know of at least one insurance company that does add a surcharge if you check, yes, you have kids. And for good reason, because of this video. It's a video of like maybe a preteen or a teenage boy jumping on a trampoline with like, you've seen it.
I'm pretty sure I shared that. I think I shared on my profile saying, this is why rates are high.
Yes.
For people like this.
So for those who haven't seen it, it is a video of a preteen or a teenage boy jumping on a trampoline. It's a very nice trampoline, very nice backyard. It's fully netted, like even this crossover net kind of thing so that you can't fall out of the net. But he's jumping on the trampoline with about, 8 other boys inside the trampoline with him, about 8 other boys on the outside of the trampoline, recording from different angles. And they are all bouncing him in a way that gets him higher and higher on this trampoline, well above the roof line, if I had to speculate.
It's
until he
actually
can,
kind of impressive.
right, until, what is that called? A front tuck? It wasn't a back tuck, but
Yeah, just doing like a somersault in the air.
Like a bajillion rotations in the air. And they put down smart. They were a little smart. They put down a mat that helps reduce the bounce, because if you're that high up and you bounce on the trampoline, you're just going to bounce right back up, right? So they put down this big fluffy mat that, reduces his bounce on the way back down so that he doesn't bounce back up into the air, which is probably how he would have bounced out of the trampoline if it would have happened. But so, do you have a trampoline? Yes. Now, do you have a preteen boy?
Exactly.
So that might need to be a part of your risk questionnaire too. Not looking at, he's going to be licensed in a couple of years. He's just going to be making some really questionable decisions in a couple of years.
Yeah. Do you have a pool that your preteen boy is going to put the trampoline next to and do backflips into the pool off of?
Oh my gosh, they make questionable decisions. But yes, so being aware of, what's going on with your client. And I love the idea, especially as you're developing one of these, because you're not going to be able to sit down in one day and formulate a questionnaire that you're going to kick out the next day. It's going to need to be something that you brainstorm with your office. If you're a principal or an agency leader looking to do this, bring your account managers into it, because they're the ones that are in the trenches that are discovering all of these weird oddball situations that you may not even be aware of, because they're talking about it with underwriters instead of with you. So bring them in and have a roundtable discussion, having them, like you said, jot down these little things that are happening as they're having conversations with their clients, and then start brainstorming what needs to be on that renewal questionnaire. Definitely catch your normal changes. Like, are you married? Maybe are there any life changes in terms of that? Because I feel awkward asking people, have you gotten a divorce on a renewal questionnaire? That's a little touchy. So, something like that. You have new drivers, any new autos, anybody move in with you kind of thing, just changes to your residence in general, and start developing it from there. But I know I'm personal lines focused. Don't just focus on personal lines. Like you said, people have moved from the office into their home. And that was one of the bigger concerns that I had when I moved from the agency into my home. This breaker that's in this office this room could not handle the number of screens and all the lights and the heater under my desk, which is a risk all in of itself. And Alexa, she's going to trigger over there in the corner, it couldn't handle it all. So it kept tripping all the time. Well, if I had this set up in a detached structure on my residence premises, depending on how my policy reads, there could be an exclusion for that structure if I don't have an endorsement on my policy, just because I'm keeping my home office, not having any clients or anything coming into my home in that other structure. So that breaker flips and it catches fire, and I don't have maybe permitted incidental occupancies on my policy, then I might be in trouble,
Exactly.
And so yes, keep the business exposure in mind. And speaking of the business exposure in mind, how many people had more free time on their hands because they didn't have to commute and they decided to develop their hobby into a little small business?
Yeah, like think about baking, and just this one fires me up when you see it. Like, I love to eat. I love baked goods. But the first thing I think about is, are there pets in the home? And you're baking baked goods and then you're selling them, which is fine. Like, I have pets. I make baked goods. The pets are not near the baked goods. They don't get any hair in there. But the fact is like, if you have a pet in the home and now you're selling these baked goods, and what if somebody has an allergic reaction to pet dander?
I wasn't even thinking that. I was thinking about cats walking across the pie.
Well, yeah, but like, I'm just thinking, yeah, but the cat now touches the pie and now they have an allergic reaction to cat dander or something. Like, I just, all of these crazy things, or maybe, something catches on fire.
We need to put you in a bubble, Ash.
Seriously, it doesn't shut off. Like, I'm just always nervous. But, and I'm even from a commercial standpoint too. I mean, this was even before COVID, but how often you need to remember to ask, like, if you have a landscaper or, a lawn cutting business, anything along those lines, they can't work in the winter. So what do you think they're doing in the winter? Half the time they're typically snow blowing or snow plowing or shoveling. And when you're driving down the road and you see your client that's a landscaper plowing a main highway in your town, a flag should be going up saying, hey, I don't think we have snow plowing on their account. So like, it's stuff like that as well, where, okay, great, you're a landscaper and I'm writing this policy, but you need to be thinking in advance, like, what else could they be doing when they're not landscaping, and making sure that they're appropriately covered for that, and that the company even would allow that to happen. Because, obviously there's there's restrictions with companies about doing, township roads or things like that.
Right. Absolutely. That's the difference in the two regions that we live in is I'm thinking, okay, I have a lawn guy and a landscaper. I know what his second job, actually his first job is. So, that's one thing. But here in the South, they're not snow blowing or snow plowing in the winter. But when that snow comes around, you better bet that every 4x4 truck in this town suddenly has some sort of metal apparatus on the front of it.
Exactly.
To help the cities plow everything. It was funny hearing you say that, because I've got this imagery going on in my head. Like, up in the North, you guys have serious snow, and down here in the South, we don't. So, our risks are a little different. Ours are country boys trying to figure out how to snow plow those roads. So yeah, think about what your clients are doing. Even through you bring up COVID. I hate to keep saying that name because I'm just getting so tired of it, and I know everybody else is too. But there were, mask businesses that came out of doing stuff like that. And then people suddenly realize that they've got sewing skills and they're going to develop that into something else. But then there's what do they call them? The MLMs, what does that
Oh,
even
yeah.
stand for?
Multi-level marketing.
Yes. Multi-level marketing that people got into because they had more free time. And so that becomes a business, and people don't always realize that. So that brings up another point. When you're putting these questions on renewal questionnaires, I know you kind of want to stick to yes and no, because you don't want them to have to write down too much and make the questionnaire difficult for them to fill out and send back to you. But you want to phrase those questions in a way that doesn't just get them thinking yes and no, it gets them thinking more open-ended. So if you just say, do you have a second job or, any other source of income, they might just think yes or no. But you might phrase it in a way that's something more like, do you have any hobbies that are, right, go ahead.
I was like, did you start any new endeavors? Or like, you can word it in a way that you're just talking to them. It doesn't have to be like, did you get a new job or something? It can be like, we had a lot of time on our hands during COVID. Did you guys take on any new hobbies? Like yes. Post the question like you're talking to them in person.
Right. And, make sure that they're thinking about their children too, because those kids probably got out there and started doing something as well, having boredom and not being able to do much. And there weren't any, jobs for them to pick up for a little while. So they might have been doing stuff around the neighborhood. So make sure that they're thinking of their kids too, not just themselves. So making sure that your questions are worded in a way that gets your client thinking was the main idea there for that. So thank you so much for those tips. The renewal questionnaires, like we said, don't just think about personal lines. Think about, and you may want to develop these for each department. So you're not going to want to send out an all-encompassing agency type questionnaire where you're encompassing personal lines, commercial lines, and life and health all in one. But if you're starting with your personal lines clients, you might slip in a couple of questions that might allude to whether or not they have a small business, because that might be a great way to further round that account into a commercial account. Or you might have a couple of areas in there. Are you interested in life insurance? I hate that question. So word it a little bit different, because everybody's interested in it. Maybe.
I feel like nobody's interested in it until it's like important. I mean, that's coming from me as an agent. It's something that always, unfortunately, gets put on the back burner, and it's so important.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely with the personal lines. And what you can even do is I would run reports in our agency and cross-reference them to see who had commercial accounts with us that we already had the personal lines of, and then split them up. So if we just had their commercial account, when reaching out at their renewal, saying like, hey, your business is our business. Did you know we also handle personal lines? And be like, if you trust us with your commercial account, we should handle this for you. And then the other way too, like maybe do a slightly different personal lines renewal that throws in a business question, because you don't want to ask a business question to somebody that you already have a business policy for, because then it makes it feel less personal. It's something super small, but that would stick in their head and be like, oh, well, they should already know I have a business. So, it doesn't need to be complicated, but just tweak it with one or two questions, and it's going to be that much more of an impact on your client.
Absolutely. And, it brings up, as you were talking, it also made me I started thinking about replacement costs. The questions don't need to be about what's changed for them in the last year, but you may even need to add those questions about what's changing in the market that you know of, that they're not aware of, that you may need to talk to them about. So we talked about awkward conversations with our clients the last time we spoke, or the first time we spoke, and about how difficult it is for them to call us, or, the renewal rate increases, or even dwelling replacement costs that are going to need to uptick every year. This year is insane with building costs. I mean, I need to redo my deck out back, and we haven't done it because the cost of lumber is ridiculous right now. And we're waiting to see if it'll come back down, or if we're going to have to save up some more just to get, the deck replaced out there. So a questionnaire like this is a great way to say things have changed in the market. Building costs have gone up. Do you feel like you're insured enough on your homeowner policy? They may say yes, they may say no. They may not even really know. But that's a great way to introduce that idea to them without it sounding like you're just trying to sell them more coverage.
Exactly.
Like it's a serious thing that building costs are so high right now that replacement costs from what they were a year ago, if your policy hasn't renewed yet, you might be underinsured. And depending on what type of policy you have, you might have a co-insurance clause that's going to kick in if that hasn't gone up enough, So yeah, these questionnaires are not only a way to discover what's changed with your client, but it's also a way to introduce to your client things that are changing in the market to help make those conversations a little less awkward when you need to bring them up. So all good things to think about. I'm not very versed on the commercial side. Is there anything that you can think of on the commercial side that we haven't already touched on?
I mean, I think with the commercial side, it gets a little bit more complicated. You can't, like you said, you can't just do a postcard when it comes to commercial lines. That one I think is going to be more on a I don't want to say case by case basis, but like a vertical by vertical basis. So if you have just your regular, like small BOPs or GLs, that one could be a little bit easier to send out and more general. But then when you're getting into those larger accounts, it's going to be probably more on if you have, if your niche is school districts, great. You can create one really big school district one and send that out. So if you have a niche, it'll be easy. But other than that, I think when your accounts get larger and they're not really the same kind of type across the board, you're going to have to really focus on doing those one-on-one reviews with them, which you should be doing anyway. If they're that large, you should be going out and seeing them face to face.
Exactly. You don't want to save a large commercial account to a PDF version of a questionnaire. Same for personal lines. One that is, major for your agency. You don't want to save it to a piece of paper either and make them feel, less taken care of by pushing it off to a piece of paper. So definitely have something fluid, consistency there, because you want to make sure that you've still got the same touch points as far as the information that you're looking for. But instead of mailing it out, it's now time to call them and, ask it in a conversational way and not like you're reading it off of a list of a questionnaire.
And I think one other thing to touch on, going all the way back to the beginning, before you even, because we were talking about, you can mail this, you can email it, there's so many different insurtech platforms out there that can handle this for you. Step one is finding out how your clients want to communicate. Do they want to hear from you? I'm the type of person, well, granted it's because I'm an insurance agent, but I don't need to hear from my agent. I'm okay. I'll get my renewal. I'll look at it. If I have a problem, I'll reach out. There's lots of clients out there that are the exact same way. There are people that when I was in my agency for 10 years, I might have not have ever heard from or seen for 6 years until there was a problem and they needed me. And they were okay with that. But then there's also other people that their account would go up $11 and they want you to look at it. Even if nothing happens, they want you to call and say, Ashley, did you look at my account for me? Is there anything we can do? And I know that. So every year I knew I was calling them no matter what, even if it was $1, $11, whatever. So I think more importantly is, how do your clients want to be communicated with? Do they want you to reach out? If they don't, send your one email, check it off your list for your E&O, purposes and move on. Or do they want you calling them and doing a review with them over the phone, which is fine. If you've got clients that want to do it and you think they're a good client, might be a small account, but you know that they're good, take 10 minutes and do it. It's gonna help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the price difference. There's a ton of grumble that comes around with insurance professionals when somebody calls and they're like, oh, my renewal went up $11. Don't discount that. Don't belittle that because that $11 might be major for that client. So turn the microphone off if you have to and go, oh my gosh, it's just $11. And this guy over here has got a $5,000 increase or a 50% increase or whatever. But then don't also just discount that. I learned that the hard way once. It was a deductible though, that sometimes the little dollars do make a difference to a client. And I kind of stuck my foot in my mouth. And thankfully that client was bold enough to tell me so. So it changed my verbiage going forward. But if you've never heard that before, $1, $11, $100, $10,000, everybody's budget is different and it's going to make a difference. So as a little sidestep there, but it spoke to me a little bit. But, I'm glad you said that not everybody wants to hear from you in the same way. So communicate with your client the way they want to be communicated with, because that brings up one last point for me is the differences in generations. Generations want to be communicated, that older generations and younger generations, they want to be communicated with differently. I was saying before that I'm doing really good at this networking thing on video. I'm not so great at networking face to face. Okay. I can network even better through memes and text messages. It's just my preferred way of communicating, right? So we had a guest on recently. Aaron Gordon was our guest recently. I don't know if you know him or not, but he also markets himself as a millennial in the insurance industry. And the first time I had ever heard that and even thought of that as more than a negative situation, because a lot of times millennials get a bad rap, even though millennials are getting older. They're not 20 somethings anymore. They're 30 somethings now. And so I think people kind of need to get away from the millennial narrative just a little bit in terms of the negativity that's around it. But the first time I had heard it was you calling yourself a millennial. That's just it. It's not even a millennial in the insurance industry, even though that's what you are. You're the Beyonce of insurance. And then following that is just the simple word millennial. So I want to ask you, I asked him what it meant to him to be a millennial in the insurance industry. And that was one thing that he brought up, was that he believes it shows that he knows that his clients don't want to be communicated with in the same way. Somebody might want a phone call. Somebody might want a face-to-face. Somebody doesn't even want to be talked to at all. You communicate with your client on the level that they want to be communicated with. It's not a one size fits all. What does it mean to you to be a millennial in the insurance industry right now?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of nailed it with what he said. I mean, to be a millennial in insurance right now is endless opportunities. I mean, I think no matter what in the insurance industry, if you're really passionate about it, and I don't care what you are, millennial, Gen X, boomer, whatever, there is endless opportunity. But for millennials specifically, there's opportunities for us to bridge the gap when it comes to communication or misunderstanding of, different generations, like to serve people. That's one of the things millennials want to do. If you read all of the articles about it, like we want to give back and find a way to help and serve. Well, we can do that in the insurance industry and to innovate. We can change things. The oldest millennial is 40 and the youngest millennial is 25. That's how big of a gap there is there. And I'm like kind of in the middle a little bit. I think I'm not really good at math. I'm kind of in the middle. So I grew up, I was around before the internet like really was a thing. I remember dial up and I remember like AOL and changing your statuses and MySpace. And then
yes.
The iPhone came out, and I'd like to think I'm pretty tech savvy. But I am that millennial that's in the middle. Like, I want to talk to a person still. I love Amazon. I can order something and get it like that. But if I have a problem with it, I want to talk to somebody. Even if it's just on their chat. I want to do it right now, and I want to talk to them.
Yes.
So I think that millennials get a bad rap that, like, oh, we're always on our computer or, like, looking at our phone. But we still want to talk to people. There's still some of the, in between old school people out there. I don't understand healthcare. I don't understand my medical bills. I want somebody to sit down and explain it to me. I'm not just going to write a check and pay it. I'm going to question it. So I really think that to be a millennial in insurance right now, there's so much opportunity for us to help bridge the gap of miscommunication between all of the other generations, because we understand both sides of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, it just, as you're speaking, you project so much imagery. Well, I'm just a visual person as it is, but I just see you in the middle and a younger generation on one side and an older generation on the other side. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask is, do you feel like it's prime time for millennials to be like, well, you want to communicate by text and you want to communicate in person. And I know the pains of both of you. So this is my space. This is why I am so good at what I'm doing, which makes that, because I asked him, I said, do you feel you marketing yourself as, or saying you're a millennial in the insurance industry is marketable? And he said, yes. And so that was kind of where I was going was, is that a marketable thing for you to be like, this is why you should trust in me, that you should acknowledge me. I've got the information because I know how to communicate with you on this side and I know how to communicate with you on that side. And I'm going to show you all how to communicate together.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. But you have to do just that. You can't just put millennial and expect somebody to understand why that's a good thing and why they should come to you. You know, when they do come to you, or you do get them on the phone, or, you know, you do go into a business that you want to write, you have to explain that to them. Like, hey, and you can make a joke out of it. It's all about being personable with somebody. I mean, make stories, tell jokes, and just say, like, you know, millennials get a bad rap. Like, yes, I love my avocado toast and whatever. But also, oh my God, also, you know, I just explain what I just explained to you, that, you know, I grew up with both sides of things. I get it. I like talking to people, but I also like, you know, the importance and the value of technology and connecting in that capacity. So, you know, we just use both of those to our advantage and just present it that way.
I love it. Thanks so much for having the conversation with me today. What's next for Ashley Fitzsimmons?
What's next? I'm going to go refill my coffee because it's Monday. And then I'm going to get working on my presentation for Tennessee next week. So if anybody from Tennessee is listening, hopefully I'll have seen you or will see you. Not sure when this is coming out. Excited about that.
Me too. I can't wait to actually meet you in person. I am so excited about that. We chat all the time via text message, my preferred communication method. But I actually get to see you in a couple of weeks in Tennessee, and I'm so excited. I cannot wait for it.
I know, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for your conversation today, Ashley. It is always a pleasure, and I know we're going to have you on again because you're just too much fun to talk to. And every time I propose a podcast topic with Ashley Fitzsimmons, everybody always wants to get on the meeting and see if we can get Ashley to talk as well. So you're just a joy and so much fun to talk to you, and I know the listeners love you as well. Thank you again so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for hanging around and listening to another awkward conversation in insurance. Stay tuned for new episodes from Awkward Insurance wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to check out the National Alliance on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or at scic.com. Now go forth and be awkward. Toodles!